Godzilla is king of the monsters, but which Godzilla movie ranks highest on Rotten Tomatoes as king of the screen? Takashi Yamazaki's Godzilla -1 was an unexpectedly huge hit in the United States and currently holds the distinction of being the highest-grossing Japanese-language Godzilla film in U.S. box office history. -1 also flips the table on the theme of the original Gojira movie by adopting a decidedly more optimistic worldview. Several Godzilla movies in the franchise have zeroed in on Godzilla's horrifying nuclear origins, pointing out that the monster is the direct result of atomic testing. Humans were only able to destroy Godzilla in Ishiro Honda's 1954 film, Gojira, by creating a new weapon even more devastating than the atomic bomb. That film is sad and dour and pessimistic. In contrast, Godzilla -1 is about how ingenuity and redemption are qualities still possible after World War II, and that humans needn't be hopeless or obsessed with death. It's okay, -1 argues, to let go of the violence. -1, however, is the 38th film in the franchise, and Godzilla has experienced a lot of highs and lows since 1954. Indeed, Godzilla is currently in its fourth era, and has gone through at least 8 or 9 unique continuities or more, depending on how one interprets the interconnectivity in the Millennium era. From 1984 through 1995, Godzilla went through the Heisei era, a rebooted continuity that began with the return of Godzilla, released as Godzilla 1985 in the United States. Return was a direct sequel to the 1954 original and ignored the intervening 14 films made up until 1975. In this film, Godzilla was bigger, meaner, and more destructive. The Heisei era also rewrote Godzilla's origin and concluded spectacularly, with the only Godzilla film to have a 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Godzilla vs. Destroya. Of course, it's worth noting that Godzilla -1 currently has a Rotten Tomatoes approval rating of 98%, a number which is extrapolated on 171 submitted reviews. Only 4 critics submitted rotten reviews of -1. Meanwhile, Godzilla vs. Destroya may have a 100% approval rating, but that number is based on only 6 reviews. Despite the technicality, though, Destroya still holds the highest Rotten Tomatoes rating. No one has yet been passionate enough to write a scathing counterpoint to any of the posted reviews. One can argue all day as to which Godzilla movie is the best, but Destroya has a legitimate claim to that title. It possesses the raucous, destructive spirit of the late 60s Godzilla films, but also a sense of operatic grandeur, which is appropriate given that Destroya was intended to be a farewell. The story is epic. Godzilla Jr., a monster introduced in 1993's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, is now growing to Godzilla size and looking a lot more like the original monster. Godzilla himself, meanwhile, has become dangerously radioactive. This Godzilla is powered by an internal nuclear fire, and that fire has only been growing over the years. Godzilla now glows red hot and smoke pours out of his skin. If Godzilla gets too hot, he will explode like a nuclear bomb and kill all living things on Earth. Humans attempt to use a weaponized airship called the Super X-3, which has been equipped with, essentially, a freeze ray. The Super X-3 is able to slow Godzilla, but his nuclear fire continues to burn. Meanwhile, several unusual Precambrian creatures appear out of the sea. It seems that the Oxygen Destroyer, the weapon used to kill the original Godzilla in 1954, has infected some of the local wildlife, causing it to grow and mutate. Just as Godzilla was born of nuclear radiation, the new monsters are born of the Oxygen Destroyer. These new monsters are essentially Godzilla's arch-nemesis, constructed of the very substance that was designed to destroy him. As the film progresses, the monsters get bigger and begin to combine until they form a massive winged bipedal bug called Destroya. The original plan was to call the film Godzilla vs. Destroyer, but Toho found they couldn't copyright the word destroyer, so they renamed the monster Destroya for legal reasons. The final fight involves Godzilla Jr. and Godzilla's eventual meltdown from his internal heat. Godzilla is not killed by a rival, but destroyed from within. It's implied, however, that Godzilla Jr. will merely take the original Godzilla's place, allowing the legacy of destruction to continue. Sadly, there were no direct sequels to Destroya, and Toho was ready to hand their Godzilla rights over to TriStar Pictures for an intended trilogy of American Godzilla films. We all remember how that deal turned out. Toho would instead make a trilogy of Power Rangers like kid-friendly Mothra films that are great for young children. When the 1998 American Godzilla tanked, Toho brought back the G-Man with Godzilla 2000, the first of the 6 film Millennium era. That era ended in 2004. There have been 11 Godzilla films since, if one counts Kong Skull Island. As for what's next for the Big G, there's Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, and presumably some sort of follow-up to Godzilla -1, considering how successful it's performed in Japan and overseas.